new people here tonight, so we'll just go through a little bit. This is the DHE team. I'm Patty, and these are my grandchildren. I live here in Dublin, and they're my life. You know, I have too much fun with them. Grandson is in Dayton playing football, and my granddaughter is going to be a OU student here this fall. Laura lives real close to me. Her husband Brandon and her son Alex is a wrestler, and little Jack is he's the entertainment of the whole family usually. And we have Brittany, who's not here tonight. Brittany is our front desk coach. Some of you guys have experienced her coaching already, and her little son Trent. And then Julie is in the back there, and this is her husband Jason and her little girl Mackenzie. So that's the DHE team, and we're just really happy to have everybody that doesn't know us yet, and welcome if it's your first time here. Tonight, what we're going to be doing is celebrating the new code that we have, the 4346, and how it is going to fit into our Step 5 hygiene classification. So the study club it started back in the summer, and we have covered a step each month. And so one month we have lecture on a step, and the next month we have a hands-on. So tonight is the lecture on Step 5. But we have gone through the phone interview, the insurance eligibility, morning huddle, getting prepared for your patient, the WOW experience last month, and then this month, tonight, we're going to be talking about the hygiene classification and or diagnosis. I say that kind of lightly. And also just how that new code is going to make things so much easier for us going forward. So the dental hygiene diagnosis actually really does exist. According to the American Dental Hygiene Association, if we are educated and licensed to treat something, then we actually have a say-so on what the diagnosis is. Laura and I have gone down to some of the board meetings, and we were really advised to say classification, especially here in Ohio. They don't like us to say that we have a diagnosis, but according to the American Dental Hygiene Association, we do have a hygiene diagnosis, and it's really instrumental in the treatment plan. And so, you know, if you think about it, we see the patient, we do the parent chart, doctor comes in, and we tell doctors all the time, you've got to be able to trust your hygienist. You have to know that they're giving you the right information. So we even ask our doctors to probe with you for a little bit, just to make sure you guys are kind of calibrated. But in the end, it is the doctor's diagnosis, but we are accountable as well, since we are educated and licensed to treat that. So it's going to all play in tonight as we talk about the new code. But why do we even have insurance codes? Do you know? Does anybody, have a guess about why we have them? It's basically, to stay standardized across the profession, and also for accurate reporting. Because you know what happens when we put down the wrong code. It can get to be a real hairy mess for our front desk people. And so we need some uniformity and some consistency, and I say professional accountability. If you are the clinician and you're in the mouth and you know what service you're giving your patient, then let's know what to call it. Let's know how we can tell somebody what we just did. And we have a lot of clinicians that will, just sort of depend on somebody else. It's like, well, it said scaling and root planing. Yeah, but which one? And a lot of our clinicians don't know their codes. So I would really encourage you guys, if you're, not sure about what our few codes that we have are, really, get to know those codes. And then just to have an efficient submission of a claim, we've got to have universally recognized codes. It's a language. We have to speak the same language together. So code what you do and do what you code. And if somebody asks you what you did, tell them what the code is. So it's real specific and universal and consistent. Because otherwise you're going to have someone looking at you like this. What did you do? What do I code this as, right? Anybody seen a face like that from your front desk? It's like, wait, tell me what you did, right? So we know that about 50% of our population has mild, moderate, or severe periodontitis. And this is not even looking at gingivitis. So if we could slow the gingivitis down when it's more treatable, then we could actually cut down on some of these huge numbers of people who are suffering from advanced or moderate periodontitis. And then we also are getting new research every day. This is the latest research that was just published, and it actually says that periodontal pathogens cause arthrosclerosis, which is heart disease. So we are very important in our patients' lives for slowing down the inflammation, and we can make a difference in the healthcare of our country and also just the lives. We can save lives through the control of inflammation in the mouth. So it's getting more and more important all the time, and more, just everybody knows it. You know, it's like we are treating and saving lives. And they are saying that it is contributory cause. Pathogens are a contributory cause to arthrosclerosis. So we can really make a difference. And we also know, we talked about last month, if you guys were here, about the laminate. This is a progression of disease. So we always tell our patients, you're so lucky that we have found your disease at this earlier stage. And it's so much easier to treat now than it would be if it was much more serious. Once we lose bone, it's way ahead of us, and it's much harder to turn around. So this another reason for treating gingivitis, but it's been really hard. It's been really hard for us as clinicians to get our mind around treating disease with a preventive code. Or just, trying to say, well, is it, is there bone loss? Could we use the scaling and replaning code? Insurance companies say, no, you better have bone loss if you're going to put in a scaling and replaning code. So we have these patients in our chair all the time, right? This guy, to treat that with a prophy is not right, is it? But it's not root cleaning either. And we look here on the chart, if we put in all the numbers that we need to put in the gingival margin, then that calculation line is going to tell us if there's any bone loss. So this calculation line shows no bone loss. So he is true gingivitis. 100% of his teeth are bleeding, right? So now that we have a code, we don't have to do this. This is always what I wanted to do. I was doodling the other night. It's actually supposed to turn upside down the other way to look like a swoosh, but I wanted to make a picture like that forever. Just don't do it. Don't polish blood. That's not what we're supposed to do. But until now, we sort of had to. So we have had before the general healthy code, the 1110 or the 1120 for children. For the healthy patient, we've had 4341, 4342, root planing for where there was attachment loss and bone loss and lots of infection. We just didn't have that middle part, just that gingival disease. What do we do with that? How do we treat it? How do we get insurance to reimburse the patient? So in the scaling, when we have scaling, that is removing calculus and plaque from the tooth and at the CEJ or above. That scaling, root planing is below the CEJ, right? So scaling and root planing is a combined code. So we don't charge for separately the scaling when we have scaling and root planing together. So when we have, in the past, we've been either undercoding that patient that bleeds or overcoding them, trying to get somebody to pay for root planing, which we didn't have bone loss. We tried to use 4355. It worked pretty good. I mean, the insurance would pay for it, but it still didn't feel good. It wasn't right. It wasn't the right code. And we also tried to use these codes and put a narrative, the patient has inflammation, but there's no bone loss. So some of those codes worked okay, but what's great now is that we do have what I'm calling the gap. I'm not sure if I read that or made it up. But anyway, the gap code is that in between where it actually reads, and you guys have on your handout the verbiage, and it's scaling the presence of generalized moderate to severe gingival inflammation. It's a full mouth procedure, and it's done after an evaluation when there has been a diagnosis made. So the removal of plaque, calculus, and stains from supra and subgingival tooth surfaces when there's generalized moderate to severe gingival inflammation and the absence of periodontitis. So no bone loss, no attachment loss. It's indicated for patients who have swollen, inflamed gingiva, generalized suprabony pockets, and moderate to severe bleeding on probing. So it should not be done with a prophy. So what is moderate inflammation and severe inflammation? It's what we see in the mouth, isn't it? The redness, the edema, the tissue looks real shiny, it bleeds on probing, and it may even be a little bit ulcerated or a lot ulcerated where it looks like you bleed on its own. If you just look at it, it would bleed, right? I'm glad you're done eating. We can talk about blood while we eat though, right? Sure. So what's generalized? According to the ADA and the AAP, generalized is when it's the disease is affecting 30% of the teeth. So in a full mouth, if the patient has 28 teeth, 30% of that would be 8.4 teeth. So we would round that down to 8 teeth. So that's kind of what we look for as far as when should we do something different. So they actually, we always ask our clients, how do you guys feel comfortable? Like, when do you want to do something more for your patient than a prophy? How many bleeding points? And we get everything from 0, I've got 0 tolerance, I don't want my patient to bleed at all. A lot of people are like that. To 30, some people are okay with 30. And so we have to, fine tune the numbers. So ADA and this code has given us the answer to that. We don't have to guess anymore. We don't get to choose how many sites we think need to be treated more aggressively. They're telling us. So when a patient comes in and they have gross plaque and calculus, you can't even do an evaluation. Then they go to a 4355. We have to knock that calculus and everything off so that they can have an evaluation. So this needs to heal for 10 to 14 days. Then they come back for one of these exams, either a periodic, a comprehensive, or a comprehensive periodontal evaluation. If there's inflammation, but it's less than 30%, then we would go ahead and do a prophy. If they have generalized moderate to severe gingival inflammation with no attachment loss and no bone loss, then they go to the new code 4346. If they're actually periodontitis, they have active infection with bone loss and attachment loss, then they go to scaling the root plane.
Okay, so before you had this, we might go ahead and do a prophy and schedule back in 2 to 4 weeks or something for SRP. But we'd already built the prophy, right, before the SRP. With the new, I don't know if that's right or not, with the new code, is that the same way? They still do the prophy that day they come in for their cleaning, and they schedule them back for the 4346?
We're thinking that. Because there's
So
no, we couldn't find
we
it
haven't
anywhere
seen
that
enough
you can't.
insurance companies kick us back and tell us no yet.
Right, and unfortunately, all the insurance companies are just now getting their mind around this and deciding what they're gonna do for us, each plan. So
Well,
the jury's
hopefully
gonna.
that's right, because I mean, I looked at the fee for it, and it's not a whole lot more than prophy.
What do they recommend?
Well, I pulled it up in MetLife, that was easy, and it was, somewhere between a prophy and periodontal maintenance.
Okay, yeah, so that's what we're thinking, somewhere between your full mouth debridement and your prophy.
But this code, they are recommending that you do this code first, the 4346, and then bringing them back for the prophy. But there aren't any limitations that we're finding. So you know how usually they'll say you can't do a prophy before, or you have to wait so long after.
Okay.
So right now, and that will be that #1 question of asking, are there any limitations from each individual company? But
And at Dental Hygiene Excellence, we really encourage our clients to go ahead and do a prophy that day if the patient really wants it, because we want to give them what they want. But we may find with this new code that we need to switch it around, so that'll kind of be we'll keep you posted on that as far as what we find out, and for you guys too, keep us posted on what you're finding out about that. So we actually will talk about that, how our protocols as far as what we are doing now, and which is what Daniel was saying, is that we do go ahead and do a prophy and then bring it back for the definitive treatment. So we may find that we have to switch that around, but in March, step 6 is about the hygiene treatment plan. And so this is a visual that we use to present treatment. We have several levels of treatment to accommodate every diagnosis. So we'll be talking about that later, so I hope you guys will be here for that. So the gap code is awesome because it's not a preventive procedure. We already have one of those that doesn't plug in very well. And it's not a difficult prophy. And I think we can have a difficult prophy where, you know, the patient doesn't bleed, they're not inflamed, but maybe they have a ton of calculus or a ton of stain, maybe they're smokers, or we have one guy that drinks so much coffee all day long that his teeth are almost intrinsically stained. It's terrible. And he wants his teeth cleaned like every 2 months or something. So that could be a difficult prophy, but that's not what this is. This would not be used for that. It is a 4000 code, which because it is a disease state. So it's not preventive, it is a 4000 code. However, it's based on generalized inflammation of 30% of the teeth. So it's not really used in conjunction with any of the other 4000 codes because these codes are actually about having bone loss and attachment loss. So are you following that? It can be, however, used with the new code. Did anybody read about the new code for implant care? So that is a new code, and it can be used with that. There has to be inflammation for this code, evidently. You can't, if your patient has a healthy mouth but they have a implant, you can't use it at that point. It has to be inflamed, and then the rest of the mouth has to be a problem. So the 4346 is a full mouth procedure. You should probably complete it in 1 day. It says if you have to, if the patient's uncomfortable with something, you can break it up. If you did, the date of service would be the second time, the time that you actually finished it. Of course, if you're doing oral DNA testing and that kind of stuff, we don't really like to break it up. We totally believe in a full mouth disinfection. So you would want to complete it in that 1 day. There's no frequency, like Laura said, or age limitation. So this code can actually be used for children who have gingivitis, who it's not just a prophy for them. And then the follow-up is the adult or the child prophy. And then, of course, we're going to have always this. Requirements for submission are going to be different with every plan. So I see some of you guys that have to do that. It's like, yeah, now let us know what we have to do.
Right. I can, part two, I've made a few phone calls already to tell you, like, just like the 4910, even though it falls in that perio category, it's not going to be the same percent. You know, it might be an 80% perio category for perio, but they might pay 100% for this people.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
Patty, can you just explain the implant?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're going on to that, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Well, it reads that it's scaling and debridement in the presence of inflammation or mucositis in a single implant, including cleaning of the implant surfaces without a flap. So this procedure is part of the treatment plan for a patient who has moderate to severe gingival inflammation. So it's not, like I said, during a prophy. It also needs to be inflamed. So, but you can't use it on the same day as 4346.
Do you have that in our stuff somewhere?
I think that, it's
that's
in
in
that,
there.
yes, it's in that handout right there. Yeah.
Well,
Honestly, that's all the information they gave us, though.
if a patient's in for a perio maintenance, a 4910, and they've got an implant, can you use this D6081?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. Not sure. I'll have to look at that.
There is a restriction, I know, when you're doing scaling or replaning, you absolutely cannot. Like if you're scaling or replaning the 4 quads,
Yeah.
you cannot go and say, oh, well, I'm cleaning off this implant and I'm
Right.
going to bill 6081. No,
Right.
because that's part of that quadrant.
Exactly.
And so I'll have to look into it. I'll look in there. So I was trying to memorize
So
all
I'm
of
thinking
those.
if you're coming in for a 4910 and this patient's got
Yeah. Julie said you can.
You can?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all been trying to read all these, you know, and it's crazy. You read one place that says 30% of the teeth, and somewhere else that says 30% of the sites. So some of our information is kind of right now, but we're just celebrating we have it. And we're just trying to figure out how we can use it, right? So definitely with the 4346, we don't have to have x-rays particularly. I mean, we need to have our updated x-rays, but not necessarily like new x-rays for this to be submitted. But we do need the chart that shows the pocket depths and the bleeding points, and also photographs would be awesome, because that will actually show, as I have in this full mouth tour, if you sent this full mouth tour, they're gonna see inflammation almost on every quadrant. So that would be proof enough that, you know, that patient is 30% affected.
I would think this would be a good code to use for the teenagers and braces.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was happy to see that there wasn't an age limitation on it. So the scenario here is that if you have a patient that actually the diagnosis is generalized moderate to severe gingival inflammation without bone loss or attachment loss, then you would be treating that patient with the 4346. So if in the future the patient comes in and does have bone loss, then you would that patient would transition to root planing. So you use your 4341 or 4342. Then after that, you do not use the 4346 again, because that patient has the bone loss diagnosis. So you wouldn't go back on that. And then the other scenario
I just wanted to clear that. That's actually in your handouts here. It's like on the second page where it says 2.
yeah, by the picture.
It cannot be done together.
40 minutes in.
40 minutes or 111 now.
So it has to be by itself.
Separate.
What?
So it has to be done by
You
itself.
might want to circle that, Sue.
Where is it?
Yes,
Well,
in that,
but
right
that
next to
paper,
the-
that
It says
paper
one
was
sentence and then read the next sentence.
by the picture. There's a picture of the implant. I think it's on the almost the last page. Yeah. So the other scenario then is that if the patient's being treated with root planing, they have generalized inflammation, periodontitis with evidence of bone loss, and they're being treated with the root planing with these codes, then any subsequent treatment would be periodontal maintenance, which is the 4910. So, or more root planing. So you would be doing one or the other for that patient. You never would go back to the 4346 on them. And then when we do root planing, remember SRP, what's the S stand for? Scaling. So that is a component. Scaling is a component of the scale root planing procedure. So we don't ever combine a scaling appointment, a code with the root planing code. So, it's awesome that we have it. I'm celebrating big time because I just feel like it's going to free up clinicians in their own mind, and then also patients will get better benefit for it, and we quit trying to squiggle around with what kind of code to use. So I think it's awesome. So continuing treatment, it just depends on what the patient looks like. If they heal up, which is the point, is that we're going to do something more aggressive to help them with their gingivitis. When we talk about treatment planning, we talk about, we don't want to do drive-by periodontal treatment. We like to give them ways to be successful long-term. So we put the brushes and the rinses and the AO gels and things like that to help them continue to stay healthier. But it'll depend on what they look like going forward, but it's probably going to be followed up by prophy and then just reevaluations, so just to see where they are. And then, if they don't look good again, say it's that kid with the braces or college kid that comes in every time looking the same with this gingivitis going on, then you can do the 4346 again. So as long as they don't start to have blood loss.
But you're gonna see them twice, is what you're saying. You always see them twice.
Yeah.
There's no interval, set interval between those 2 appointments.
No. So, the only question we have is, should we do a prophy that day that we diagnose and put them into therapy for the 4346, have them come back? Not real sure about that yet, but it doesn't sound like it's a problem. That's what we normally do, is we go ahead and do a prophy that day and then bring them back for their therapy, whether it's root planing or this, and then we always prophy again during root planing, so they're going to be polished plenty of times, for sure. So, of course, just like everything else, like we said, and I always look at Debbie back there, because she's like, you know, we don't know what they're gonna do. They are required to recognize all of our CDT codes. So, but they are not required, as we know, to cover them all. So they may or they may not. They are at this moment evaluating how they're gonna treat us on this code. So, you know, what we have to do is just use it. I think the more people use it, because they did hear us. They did, I don't know if did any of you guys write in about needing this code? Because a lot of people were very active about that, just writing and saying, hey, we need a code for gingivitis, for, you know, inflammation. So they did listen, so we do have it, which is awesome. But right now, the prediction is that, you know, it's gonna vary between plans, and they are, though, supposed to be letting us know, you know, if they're gonna cover it or not, and especially for participating. So, anybody have any other questions about that? Because we're gonna move right into how we decide if they are inflammation, or if they actually have some pseudopocketing, or if they actually have some bone loss and attachment level.
I will say one thing, Patty, I know a couple of the insurance companies that I've talked to so far, they don't even have the code yet. So they said, send it in, and then if it's denied, I know.
What happened to that?
Then to rebill it, basically, you know, so they're just.
It's just a stall tactic to
Yeah.
get the money.
Yeah, so, you know, just.
Well,
you know,
not
some
to
are good,
rain
but-
on my party.
No, what I'm saying is just
Right, won't work.
resubmit it. Don't give up.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Anybody else?
So this code kind of is the debridement code now kind of replaces that a little bit? Or?
Well, no,
Not
because,
necessarily.
you know, debridement is what? That's when we remove the deposits, you know, the heavy deposits, and then the patient has to heal from that, which, that kind of really, I don't know, I have a problem with that. It's like, what if we have a new patient come in and they need a debridement, but you can't do an exam?
Right.
Well, if they leave and don't ever come back, then we've done a debridement and the doctor's never seen them. It doesn't really, I don't know, but that's what they say to do.
That's the code we would charge them for like the gingival repair, right?
Do what?
The code, that's the code we would use it for like the gingival repair.
Right, yeah, so we will not use that. We do have a code now that replaces it, yes, as far as coding.
Yeah.
But we still have the debridement code for that service. That's when we're just knocking off the big stuff, hoping that we can get an evaluation done.
So most likely, most of the gingival therapy codes would go under the D4346 if it's meeting the requirements. Maybe like the
Right,
no
yeah.
bone loss or no.
Right. So, but it does not, and in one place it said that you can have pockets that are suprabony, we call them, I used to call it pseudopocket, they actually call it pseudopocket in some of this information, where the pocket is all above the CDJ. So they're still, I mean, it could be 6 millimeters deep, you know, distal of 32 or whatever, but there's no bone loss, so it's not root planing, it's not bone loss, it's not attachment loss. It's just what we call pseudopocket, super bony pocket, whatever. So, any other questions? We're going to move into then how do we diagnose? How do we actually chart and have the chart reflect? How many people in here are actually putting in, who uses EagleSoft? Okay, what do you guys use? Soft in? Okay. What do you guys use?
Ascend.
What?
Ascend.
Ascend.
It's a new Dentrix program.
Okay. Didn't know about that. Okay, so we're all using different programs, and it depends on which program you're using as to how you absolutely physically put the numbers in. But we're going to talk about the gingival height. Like, you know, where is that? Is it a super bony pocket, or is it actually partly super bony and partly actually bone loss? So, you ready? Laura's going to move into that next segment.
Yes, everyone, last call for food. If you want to make another plate, get fruit, cookies.
Oh, the bacon's in here.
Bacon's in here.
Drop the bacon.
If you want to take a quick potty break, but we're going to keep moving on. How about any questions so far of what you have?
we're all gonna probably have some questions.
The fibrotic tissue, like from medicine, Delanton and stuff, that would be all supra.
I never had a code treatment.
I do hope everyone will take the time to kind of look through some of these pictures. I do have quite a few pictures I brought today. But I think it kind of helps you as you look through. And you can go online and just kind of have this. I think it's great for the entire team to have. That way if you're administrator, front desk, people have questions or coding, whenever there's new codes, I just always feel like it's like that, you know, well, that's not how it was, or they're probably not gonna do that, just that actual clarification from the ADA, because they're trying to write this for third parties, so remember that. The AAP writes for our license and our diagnosis, and the ADA helps write for third party coverage, so I'm talking about the insurance companies. So that's why we have ADA classification. I'll talk a little bit about that, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those still exist because that's for reimbursement. That's actually not for legal diagnosis. And that was something just over the years of learning about the two different entities, how that kind of works. So that's why you have this in your hand, because right, somebody's going to tell you, don't think that that's going to get covered. Then we're kind of looking to the ADA for that, like, okay, because they're helping with the CDP codes. The other thing is, thank you, Dr. McClatchy, because I stole this from her. It's still from her, but information from her office. Just, you know, I think Charles Blair writes so many great things. And when you have questions, I think that's wonderful for the doctors in the room to be able to have that resource, because they really tell you, like, indications. Like, they talk about the prophy, yes, you shouldn't bill for it, it's probably not most likely going to be covered. They give you little examples and narratives, things like that. So we have some of that too, that we can help you, but this is kind of your go-to with ADA, and then, right, any kind of CDT codes. Charles Blair really does a great job. All right, so we're going to talk about if you're really ready clinically. So I'm going to move to clinical. That's kind of, to me, a lot of, even though it deals with you administratively, we're going to be kind of going from classification today to really just learning how and making sure that we all understand that, to taking that into the actual clinical aspect of practicing on your patients, because that's what we do, we practice on our patients, and then moving that into treatment after that next session. So February will be more hands-on, and I'll talk about that because I would like everyone to really participate by bringing a perio chart, and you can submit them ahead of time. And so I just want you thinking about that as we're going through this, that there's no judgment. We actually want this study club interactive, and if you don't do it ahead of time, the only reason I want it ahead of time is that I'll take the name off, as you'll see in some of these charts, and I'm just going to show the chart. And what that is a learning experience. What are we seeing? How would we classify it? And then eventually we can talk about treatment. And I really believe bringing your own charts and patients that you work on, it just, to me, is the full circle, because that's the best way we learn, experiential learning, the more that we can do. If you don't do that ahead of time, you can bring one with you, and you can love to have you come up front and talk about it, or if that's not your personality, then one of us will talk about it for you and kind of explain your case and allow your colleagues to then talk about your case and how they would have classified it, and then we can move into how would we treat it as a group. So that's really what I'm looking for, participation. So at the end, Julie is in the back. If you already are like, hey, I definitely want to do this, let us know. And then right, over the course of time, just email us or just send it to us and say, here's my chart. That's fine as well too. All right, so we got to talk about the new code. I say I always feel like I'm jumping from 2000 whatever year to the next year, right? It's like this leap of faith that, oh my gosh, how did it get here already? And you start look back. I say don't look back because you won't make it to the other side. Just keep going forward. But today we're going to talk about the American Academy of Periodontology, that classification. And as Patty told you, across our country, the American Dental Hygiene Association calls it a hygiene diagnosis. So you should feel pretty grounded in that. I have the privilege of working for a doctor who allows me to use that word, to say I have a hygiene diagnosis, or even to use the word diagnosis. With some other people I know in the room, that their doctors want them to be able to use that word and be doing that. But even if your doctor doesn't, we want you to know that that is, your license is held to the American Dental Hygiene Association. that is a standard across our country. So to feel proud about that and what you're doing every day. We're gonna look at charts and x-rays to see that we're classifying correctly, and then we're gonna talk just briefly about the impact it has on treatment. So the AAP classifications, there are 8. So who remembers ADA 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Guess what? They did away with it. They did away with it in 1999. Yes, our license isn't held to the ADA 1, 2, 3, 4 classifications. That's just for my administrator third-party billing. So if they want to fill that out on the insurance form, they're going to fill out ADA classification. But in your chart, when you're speaking to a colleague, especially a periodontitis, they actually did away with that in 1999 and came up with 8 main classifications. So, we're going to learn, if any of you already, I see some people already filling in their paper. Yes, go right ahead. We're going to talk about it. You're going to need to know these. I'm having you fill them in so you will remember them. And I have the answers for you, but I just want you to take a look because we have gingival diseases. You're going to see that there are 8 gingival diseases within that category itself. We have chronic periodontitis, and you're going to see the different categories of chronic from 2 main categories, slight to moderate to advanced. We have aggressive, which most of us hopefully may have seen once in our lifetime. If not, you may not, just depending where you work. And then we have the manifestation of systemic diseases, which is really where our very first study club this year started with Heart Attack and Stroke Prevention Center. Then we have our necrotizing periodontal diseases, our abscesses, our endodontic lesions, and then obviously developmental or acquired deformities. And there's a lot of different conditions in there. So the AAP looks as a diagnosis of all of these categories: age, gender. You see my favorites are highlighted in red: medical history, previous period. You're going to have the answers. I'm going to get there. Previous period status, probe depths, clinical attachment loss, radiographic findings, clinical findings. And then in 1999, they actually included this. So I want you to take note because we talked a lot about testing at the beginning of our sessions. They actually had in there gingival percolator fluid and subgingival microflora tests. So they were acknowledging that in 1999, and they have a whole section on it of testing and where it's going, and they knew that's going to be having an impact on diagnosis, and so they include it, as well as genetic susceptibility tests. So that's that second piece that we talked about, interleukin testing. So that was already written in 1999 because of the research. So legal diagnosis means that we have to chart accurately, and anyone who has any questions, I did not put in the parameters because we all are techie, we all have our iPhones and our phones on us. You need to go to www.perio.org. That's where you need to go. You can go to journals at the top, and you can go to then the parameters of care. You can go to the classification system because it's pages and pages. So tonight I just kind of want to begin the highlights of some of those, and then at our next session we're going to dive deeper so that people can really understand what those mean. But please keep this website when you have a question. That's really where you want to go, and that is the American Academy for Periodontology. If you put in AAP or .com, you will go to the American Academy for Pediatrics, by the way. So just heads up on that. If you're like, I can't get there, it's perio.org. All right, so who's heard of gingival height before? So some hygienists were taught this in school and some were not. I definitely wasn't. I'm getting old. 21 years ago, no mention of it. Never heard, never knew it existed. So we're gonna learn because now you're going to hear from a student is going to explain it to you because that is actually becoming on the board, on our national boards. They are talking about it and they have to know about it. So I want you to know that, and they clearly talk about it as from a hygiene diagnosis. So we need to be able to measure to get a true clinical attachment loss, or the CAL. Patty always likes to say, where is she in the back, that the reason why this has become such a big issue is that every computer system, if you look at your computer, it doesn't matter what you have, Eaglesoft, Dentrix, Open Dental. I heard you guys have a new one. What is it? What is
Ascend.
it? Ascend. Right. Almost all of them, they're all going to have a line that says CAL. And it automatically is calculated. So if you don't put in a number, then a calculation happens with an error. And that's what we have to be concerned about, is that we're allowing that error then to cause the wrong calculation. So that's why Patty's like, this is why it's such a hot topic, because if you just had to write it down on paper and you didn't put anything else, well, that's all the information you put. But unfortunately with computers, it's automatic. It's automatically being generated. And then you're clicking that, yes, that's right. So in this picture, what we want to talk about, gingival height, and doctors, so you have a couple doctors in the room. Almost every doctor is taught this, or if we have assistants, F does. And hygienists, you see this. But I want you to tell me, this tissue on this tooth number 8 here, on the whatever tooth we're going to call this, that's where the CEJ is. So what is on the enamel? Tissue. Gum tissue. We call that gingival height. So tissue that's on the enamel is called height. On most computers, you're going to see a GM, gingival margin. They want to know where this margin of the tissue, where is it in relation to the CJ? Is it on the enamel or is it receded? Where is the margin? Where is the edge? You are going to tell your computer where the edge is. And that's how we calculate. So you're going to learn this. So I did include this in here because here are all the classifications. This is straight from the AAP. We have chronic, we have aggressive, here's the manifestations. You can see, I'm not going to read through them, our necrotizing, our abscesses, endodontic lesions, and developmental or acquired. What I want to take note here is at this very bottom, they talk about percentages. What is localized is less than 30%, and if generalized, greater than 30%. And that's based on how much clinical attachment. So on that CAL line, they are defining slight as 1 or 2 millimeters of CAL, moderate 3 or 4 on the CAL line, and severe 5 or more. You're going to see that again, but I'd like you to take notes because I feel like the more times you write it, then you get it, you understand it. If you're holding that little laminate that you got at the front from Julie, that is your cheat sheet to take into your room with you. When you're like, oh my God, this was on my CAL? Oh, there it is, 1 to 2, right, 3 to 4. So we like our clinicians to be able to have these because, right, this isn't a quiz while your patient's there. You shouldn't have to go look through your notes. We want it quick and easy so you can make the right diagnosis in your chart. So the parameters will be talked a lot about when we get into treatment because that's what the parameters are written for. The parameters are written for classifications, how we classify and define them, and then the parameters are the parameters of care. So let's fill this out. What are the 8 main classifications? Who got them all? I have a winner. Oh, Jamie also? Shouldn't hit the 8th one. Oops. Did you get them all? She got them all? Way to go. All right. We're going to see if they're right. Oh, Brittany and Bethany. You got yours all? All right, so let's kind of go through this. A few people have them all. How about who can fill in this? Slight to moderate is what? 1 to 2. Jody just said it. What is advanced? Great. So slight to moderate is really 1 to 4, and we're going to talk about this in the answers, and then advanced. I just want you to get the CL in your head is 5 or greater. So here are your answers. We have gingival diseases. We have chronic, which can be localized or generalized. That's where most of us hang out all day long. We're looking at chronic. We have aggressive. Aggressive used to be, you're gonna see in there, remember we used to like do it by age and all different kinds of definitions, but this is that person that looks healthy and then you're looking at their x-rays and literally their first molars have no bone. Then we have periodontitis as a manifestation of systemic diseases, which we know, that's everything we're finding and reading in our literature. We have necrotizing, so that's your anux. We have abscesses of the periodontium, so that's your true abscess, like periodontal abscess. Then we have periodontitis that's associated with endodontic lesions. A lot of people don't talk about this. It's a very hot topic when you talk to endodontists. It's a huge implant topic as well. Because we'll take a tooth out that's treated endodontically and we're putting it right in a socket that has periodontitis, an endodontic lesion. Then we have developmental or acquired. And this is where occlusal trauma comes in. I know a lot of doctors ask about that. Well, where's, like occlusal disease that we see related? When they go hand in hand, it's going to be here because it's like an acquired disease. And then attachment loss. So slight to moderate is 1 to 4. Slight's 1 to 2, moderate's 3 to 4. By the AAP, they just put it in one category. So you can say this patient is generalized slight to moderate, meaning that you could look at the CAL, it's going to have numbers anywhere from 1 to 4. The probe depths can be anywhere from, they actually can be anything, but typically the range is going to be 4 to 6. But as you read in the parameters, probe depths, it doesn't matter. They want to know how much attachment loss is what we are talking about as far as bone loss. Then advanced is 5 millimeters and greater. And it clearly states it can be 6 millimeters or it can be any millimeter. And we'll talk about why it's any. You're going to get a clear indication. I really want you to get that in your mind. And I'll show you some pictures. So what is the relevance of probe depths? Why do we even care then? Why are we even getting a probe depth? Yes, Jamie, you're actually right. Insurance. Because we'd have to prove that there's a 4 millimeter pocket, a 4, to actually diagnose for insurance to get reimbursement for scaling and replaning. We also have to prove that there's attachment loss, and we just saw this in the new code. What did it say? No attachment loss. So if you're going to use that code, you have to show there's no attachment loss. Which, if you have not been measuring attachment loss or measuring gingival height, every one of your charts, if you go back and look at the CAL, would say that your patients all have attachment loss. Because the computer automatically puts in 0 and calculates it, adds it. So, I want to make sure that everyone kind of knows that for themselves. The AAP, I try to use the word more of, right, that's your legal, that's your license. That's what you're going to put in the notes. So we want to see, in all our offices, we want to see periodiagnosis. And you would see one of these classifications, one of those 8 classifications. For most of us, it's going to say what? It's going to be chronic. Unless you know this person has something systemic or right, it's like acute, they come in, they have an abscess, it's pretty clear. But most of what we're doing every day as hygienists, we are dealing with chronic periodontal disease. So, who can tell us how you define the new code then for gingivitis? It's up there. You can get your eyes to see that. But Patty went over it, you have it in front of you. What is then the diagnosis for this gingivitis? Because it's not slight gingivitis. 30%, and the ADA is saying 30% of teeth. So, if you have your phone out, take it out. You have 28 teeth. What's 30% of 28 teeth? 8 teeth, 8.4. So that's what I want you to leave with, because everyone's gonna ask, well, what's 30%? Right, if you have 32 teeth, do the math. Right, I want that embedded because, right, make it easy. They're saying it's to moderate to severe gingivitis, so no attachment loss. You have generalized bleeding, meaning 30% or 8 teeth.
And that's bleeding to probing. Or is that bleeding to scale it?
Well, that's a very interesting component. You will have to show it on your chart because who's gonna have to send that in for submission? Right. So I'm gonna argue they bled it prophy, mark it on your chart. You can't say there's no bleeding and then go fill the code. They have to see at least 8 teeth on your chart. Because that's what they're saying.
Not sites.
Yes, now the AAP, when they talk about things, they're gonna talk about sites with periodontal disease. So that's why I wanna make this distinction, because they talk about things as localized and generalized, but they will talk about sites per site. And I have a feeling the ADA went with teeth, or at least is arguing that. You're gonna see there's a lot of conversation around it. And there is really no definitive answer, but the ADA did say in there when you read through teeth. And I think it was just probably made it easier on them because somebody, one tooth could have 6 sites. And I think they just didn't want to have like 1.5 teeth being submitted. So that might have been what they were calling their like safety net to not go by sites. Because periodontal disease, you can have 1 site on 1 tooth and submit. See the difference? Okay, so summary. Gingivitis, 4346 is for moderate to severe gingivitis. If you don't have 8 teeth, what are you doing? What code? A 1110. I want to make sure you get that tonight. That's why you're here. Right. If you don't have 8 teeth, you're doing a prophy. So if my doctor walks in the room and I have 6 teeth and she wants to know why I didn't put them into gingival therapy or why I'm not billing a 4346 because I only have 6 teeth. Don't be telling me to push harder. No.
Sharpen your probe.
Right. I want you to make sure you know what you're doing. You're doing it on a prophy. Right. If you have 8 teeth, you get to use the code, and right, you're going to bill for 4346. All right. Slight to moderate. Now we're talking about periodontitis. So now we're looking at CAL. It can be 1 site. And it just has to have a number on the CAL between 1 and 4. And then advanced is 5 millimeters and up. So your diagnosis is based on attachment loss. You have to make sure you measure gingival height, and it's a calculation between tissue height and your probe depth. So I'll be asking, where is the height of this tissue? So clinical attachment loss is basically you start at a fixed point. The only fixed point we have on any tooth is the CJ. So where the enamel meets the root surface, the cemento-enamel junction. We take that, and if it goes up on the enamel,
Positive.
what?
Positive.
For some people it's a positive.
Not
For other
positive in a good
people?
way, but.
Right. Other people it's going to be minus, and I'll show you that. If it's recession, it's what you've always done. What wrecks most people's brains is that you're going to do this on every single site. So you're going to do this how many times on an entire tooth?
6.
6 sites. So it's just the same as your probe depth. You have to go back and measure the height of the tissue where that probe depth was. So let's take a look at attachment loss. This is in your book. I gave you this from Insurance Solutions because I feel like it's one of the most clearest explanations out there. And I want you to be able to take it home to look at it because if you've never measured it, I always say we carry so much baggage we start to confuse ourselves with the facts and we start to flip it around. let's just take a look at this first tooth. I want you to see, what is the probe depth on the tooth on the left? This is by 3, 6, and 9 millimeter probe. We have what? 6. What's the next one? 6, 7, great. What's the next one? 8. That's 3, 6. 3, 6. We're measuring from the bottom of the pocket to the top of the tissue. In each one of these, what's the commonality? They're all 6 millimeter pockets. That is of huge importance. That's actually, when you go read why they changed the classification system, was for this reason. We had general practitioners, and mainly, yes, they blame most of what I say, us hygienists, is that we say, yes, it has 6 millimeter pocket. They have advanced periodontal disease. And guess what? The periodontist is like, no, this guy doesn't have advanced disease because I have 3 millimeters of tissue on the enamel. I have 3 millimeters of height. So if there's 6 millimeter pockets and 3 of it is on the tissue, I only need to know how much bone loss that's from the CJ down to the bottom pocket. How much of the root? 3. That's not advanced. That's what? You're chronic. Chronic what? Chronic periodontitis. But if the CAL, you just told me is 3, is it slight to moderate or advanced? Slight to moderate. Slight to moderate is 1 to 4. So right, this patient only has 3 millimeters of attachment loss or bone loss, and so that is slight to moderate. Or if you want to be very specific, it's moderate. You can't say that word, thank you. Okay, so let's look at the middle tooth. We still, you could argue maybe there's an extra millimeter, but this is from the CJ to the bottom of the pocket. This is, again, let's say it's a 6 millimeter. We have no recession, we have no gingival height. It is at the CJ, and when it's at the CJ, we call it a 0. We have nothing to take away because that's what we want to know. From the CJ, how much root, how much bone loss has moved from that fixed point. And so 6. So if that's 6 on the CAL, now what's our classification? It's advanced because it's 5 or greater. All right, so we're going to go to this last tooth. Now we have that same 6 millimeter pocket, but now we have what? About 3 millimeters of recession. And this is what we were, I would say, or I was, back in 1995. That's what I was taught to do. Hey, oh, I can see the root. I got to add in the recession. So now this patient has 6 plus 3. They have lost from the CJ down to the bottom pocket 9. Okay, bye-bye. That two's not staying in there. This was the periodontist argument. Don't tell me what the pocket depth is. I need to know what. Because the pocket depth doesn't mean anything to me. I need to know how much bone the patient's lost. So I say I feel very guilty in my career because I say I was part of the implant generation that caused implants because that's all I was doing. I was saying, well, it's a 6 millimeter pocket. Okay, it's advanced. We probably did refer, but on a lesser scale, imagine what this does. And that's what we're trying to catch. That's what they're trying to change, and you're going to see that. Can everyone see that? Anyone confused by that? Great. So I ask why? See, some people, believe it or not, actually say this is healthy. Some practices that we go to. And they're just going to say that this patient has recession. Why would a periodontist or somebody who really works tissue is going to be upset? Would we say that that's healthy? Even from a gingivitis standpoint, but what are they worried about mostly? What should we be worried about? The mucogingival junction, how much attached tissue, and right. This patient is what? Losing bone. what does this look like under here, in between here? Do you think they have bone loss? That's what we want to find out. Well, apparently. So this was the other reason. Because now look at the opposite. How much is our probe depth? 1. They're healthy. That's what we'd say to the periodontist. They're healthy. They're fine. All my probe depths are between 1 and 3. That's what we read in people's charts. Healthy, 1 to 3. I argue. Well, I can see why periodontists want to change our system. Because we have millions of hygienists saying this is a healthy tooth. In fact, though, how much bone loss does this patient have? Because here's the CEJ. 5 millimeters. So from the CJ down to the bottom of this pocket is the total attachment loss. And that's what we need to measure. So is this patient harder or easier than the last one? I totally agree with you. I say the healthier they are, the harder it is. Why? Where's their CEJs? Can you see them? No. So how are you going to know? You have to go feel for it. And so you get an idea of where they are underneath. Some you might see. Some you could see. Others, where's the CEJs here? We know that they're going to come up and follow that. So I say the healthier the tissue is, the almost harder it is for us to get a true attachment level. Because, right, especially when we're not used to doing it. So this is what you're almost doing with either the probe, you're kind of feeling where that line is, or you know. Just like I say, how many hygienists can probe a pocket and tell me, not look, and tell me what millimeter they're at? Right, many hygienists do that. I watch them, they're calling out, and I was like, they're not even looking. I don't think they're looking. Like, I wonder if they're thinking about the grocery bill. I'm eating for dinner and I hear numbers. Most of us are on some level. I say unless we get almost on autopilot. It's like we almost get this beat and we kind of know. And then you get the feel for the patient, right? Not to mean that you don't drop in a 4 or 5 or you don't drop down into 6 or some other level. But it's very interesting. If, we like to record our hygienists because it kind of gives you an idea too of what your path is. I say your pattern of how you're doing that. But this is then what you're doing when you're going back, because I always tell hygienists, don't make a science project out of it. The first time you probed, and you had to do probe depth, right? We were out in school and we're like, oh, I think it's a 3. No, maybe it's a 2. Can't see the line. Right. Okay, and I'm sure instructors are like, for God's sake, just 2, fine, come on, right? That's what we need to do here, because you just need to be true to who? Yourself. Because we're allowed to be a millimeter off. So if I go in here and say this is a 2, then when I come back to call out the height, I need to be true to me. See, that looks like a 2 to me. So I'm going to minus that away. I have eagle sauce, so I'm going to say -2. So if I was going to do my probe depths first, I'm going to go in here and say 2, 1, 2. And then when I come back, I'm going to say -2, -1, -2. So you just have to be true to me because I'm the person doing the chart. So I put this picture in here because we're going to look at this more. A lot of people have a hard time because this is 3 millimeters. If we don't cancel that out, you're telling the computer that person has 3 millimeters of bone loss. And I'm going to ask you, it's a really healthy patient, is there 3 millimeters of bone loss? No. That's tissue height. Gingival margin. Same thing. I don't know why it's showing up like this, but this is a healthy patient. So the CEJ is where? On the enamel. It's above the CEJ. We cannot see it. So you have to minus it. If you're an Eagle Soft, you minus. If you're in Dentrix Soft Dent, you plus. To even confuse you more. So you want to know the systems? I don't know theirs. Is Open Dental plus? Open dental's plus. I believe soft dent, open dental, dentrix, those are all pluses. And then you have your Eagle Soft, and there's another one that's minus. You're plus, right, Kristen?
Minus.
Oh, you're minus? Okay. Oh, are you Eagle Soft, right? Okay. So make note of your system, because a lot of people go back and say, this doesn't work, ours won't record. And they're like hitting plus, and it's not doing anything because, right, it only, in their system is set up to acknowledge the minus and vice versa. All right, if it's at the CEJ, what is it? 0. And then our lovely picture here, this is what we're used to. If it's below the CJ, you have recession. It is what you've always said. Don't make it harder than it is. You do nothing different. You always said 3, it's a 3. You don't add minus, it's just what you've always done. It's just that positive number, that number. So I have this student, and it took me a while to find different people, but I really enjoyed her because she's actually teaching for the national boards. So you can hear her say that. It's a few minutes.
Hello everyone, my name is Claire and I am the founder of Student RDH Dental Hygiene Boards Review, boards for local anesthesia and also national boards. Today we are going to talk about, again, a very important topic that is related to periodontology. You have heard about CAL before, probably clinical attachment level or clinical attachment loss. Well, I am not here today to dispute the terms because sometimes they say it's called loss, sometimes called level. And some books also say that it can be either, it doesn't matter, they're the same terms. I'm here today to help you understand why we are measuring CAL and how we are going to do it for our exams. Probing tests are great. Usually we use probing tests to understand the health of the periodontia. We know if it's a big pocket, there's a problem. When it's like stabilized, it's good. But probing tests are not really enough sometimes. Let me just draw an example. It's a tooth, and this is a CJ where the crown meets the cementum. Usually there's a slight indentation. Let me just try to draw the same tooth over here. Okay, so now let's look at the gums. In this case, there is obviously inflammation. Well, it looks like a big inflammation, but let's just say it is like that. And in this case, there is recession. Okay, now, let's see probing depth. Probing depth over here is, let's say, 5 millimeter. P, 5 millimeter. And here as well, 5 millimeter. Okay, same 5 millimeter pocket, very different scenario. Obviously, this guy, which is recession, is not doing good at all compared to this guy. See how little support there's left. So that's why sometimes pocket is not enough. And this concept of CAL, C-A-L, is therefore a better and accurate measurement of the periodontal support. Because when we measure CAL, we measure it from a fixed point. That is the CEJ. And as we talked about, the CJ has a slight indentation. That's how we find it. In order to measure the CAL, there are two numbers that we need. The first one is the probing depth that we already have. And the second one is the gingival margin to the CJ. Again, this concept of the CEJ keeps coming up because that's our fixed point. So this means the top of the gum to the CJ. And you have studied this already. You know that when there's recession, we add them. And when there's overgrowth, we subtract them. But let's just see again the example and understand why we have to do that. The assumption here generally is that when we have healthy gums, if we didn't have any problem, the base of the pocket, the base of the sulcus would be around the CEJ. Let me just draw it on this side as well. So that we would have not lost anything. But obviously, with different reasons, we start losing some attachment, and that's what the CAL helps us understand. So here, as we just discussed, there is a second number we have to find out, which is from the top of the margin to the CJ. In this case, let's say it's just 3 millimeter. Margin to the CJ, 3 millimeter. On this side, let's say margin to the CJ, 1 millimeter. Without doing subtraction, without adding them, let's just look at the attachment level. What is going on? Here, our assumption again was that base of the pocket was around the CJ, and now we see this base of the pocket. We can see that we lost about this much. Let's see, in this case, in recession, we lost a lot. From here all the way here, we lost a lot. So you can see that, first of all, in recession, you would actually add them up to say there was 6 millimeter of attachment loss. In this case though, the attachment loss is not 5, it's not 3, it's actually 2 millimeter. Because what we did is you actually took the probing depth with this the entire thing and subtracted this 3 millimeter, and what you actually have as loss is this 2 millimeter. So I hope this helps you understand that not just like robotically do a plus, oh, when there's recession, probing depth and margin to the CJ, it's a plus, and when there is overgrowth, it's a minus. I hope this helped you understand why you have to add them when there's recession and when you have to subtract those two numbers when there is overgrowth. Please let me know if you have any questions. My email is clairej, CACLAIREJ @studentrdh.com. I am here to answer all your questions. You can leave comments. And also please visit our website, which is studentrdh.com. You can do the free trial before you register for the local or national board exam reviews. And also follow our blog because we have a lot of great free content for you to have for your boards.
Okay, that's for boards. Who could pass that on their boards if you didn't know today? Okay, so we do have some schools locally that are teaching this, but some still are not because our local, it's not on there. But if you're gonna go take like Western or National Board, bigger boards out on, I say, the other side of our country, and they're rewriting this, and that's why these students are doing that, is so that, right, a lot of what I would say, our girls local are failing these questions. Because they weren't what? Taught it in school. So they either were smart enough that they read it or came across it when they were studying, or they had an instructor who told them, hey, you need to know this, but we don't do it here at school. We just do probe depths and recession. And that's literally what's happened. We've been asked to go in and speak, and it was for this reason. And the instructor said, we want our students to know this. Will you come in and teach a class just one day? We want you to come in as guest speakers and let them know why they need to know this. So why do hygienists need to know this, or why do we need to be doing it?
We're doing a proper diagnosis.
Yes, so that it's accurate. That is what our license held to, and right, nobody wants to be putting something out there. I always made a joke that, yeah, well, I shouldn't care, it'll be my administrators who get in trouble for, they forged the chart, I'll blame it on them. They just zeroed everything out. All right, looking at charts and x-rays. Your charts should match your x-rays. I do have to tell you this is probably one of my biggest things that I literally probably have to walk away from some of the other coaches, because I'm probably one of the most aggressive coaches out of the four of us, is that I will look at somebody's period chart and then I'll go look at the x-rays. They're not the same people.
Seen that look before.
And all I want to do is say, did you look at your x-rays? You might want to peek at your x-rays and then go chart. Why would I want to say that to somebody? Yes, you need to think. You need to get outside of automatic pilot, because sometimes too, they're even doing that with their attachment loss. And I think that in some practices, I'm not saying every practice, some practices are so used to seeing disease that they think it's normal. They think that's healthy. And it is unfortunate, but that is very true. We have some nurses that are, you know, well, Patty told you, what's the population? How many people have periodontal disease? What?
47%.
For which age group? That's the what? That's the older age group. Yeah, as a whole, it's over 70%. So depending on your clientele, we have some hygienists, that's all they're looking at every day, and they think, well, that's normal. Because that's all they see. And the problem is they're not taking, and I say draw the line if you have a hard time seeing it. Draw the line. You should be able to clearly go and draw, find the CJ where the enamel ends and draw that line across. Because this is then what you are measuring. And so your chart should measure and equal that bone loss. So the reason why I like this x-ray is it's going from what? Health to what?
Disease.
Advanced disease. All in one x-ray.
So the connection between those, if you'd be stopping on your calculus and not getting to the bottom of the socket.
You could, and that's why sometimes it's like, oh, I have like two different people here. Oh, it's amazing that person's in the chair. Great. I'm looking at one chart and I'm looking at an x-ray, and it doesn't match up. And sometimes it could just be from the gingival margin, sometimes it could be right. As you said, maybe there's a factor in the way, it could be an overhang, but that's actually why I really teach to take x-rays first. You should always be taking your x-rays and looking at them. That is what? You're pre-screening. So to classify, I gave you guys this, there's really 4 questions you want to ask yourself. Number 1, is there attachment loss? Is this really healthy gingivitis, or am I going to periodontal disease? That's really the first question, and those are your 2 defining factors. Is this periodontal disease? That's the first question you ask yourself. Second question, is it slight to moderate or is it advanced? Okay, so I'm just looking for some numbers. Slight to moderate, 1 to 4. If I see a 5, I've got some advanced. Is it localized or generalized? Well, he gave me that. They said 30%, which they go by sites. Anyone do the math? Don't have to. I'll tell you, 50 sites is 30%. Anything over is 51 sites. And that's for 2018. So right, are you going to sit there and count them? Yes, some people do, but your eye will get really good at knowing what 50 sites or more looks like. Secondly, is it active or stable? And we're just talking about what? I'm talking about the hygiene part. I'm not talking about occlusal trauma, occlusal disease. So what is your determining factor if something's active or stable? Are you going to treat it or not treat it? Bleeding. Great with the niece of bleeding. All right. Interesting. So, is there attachment loss? You're going to look 2 places, on your chart and on your x-rays. Believe it or not, here we go. This is healthy. Some people never see that. I honestly believe some hygienists really have never seen a molar look like that. That is a healthy tooth. That's what this person would look like. They have what? Papillas. I don't see CHAs when I look at them. Wow. I can look at their x-ray and see the height of the bone is where. I can draw that line, and there it is. So what am I going to see on my chart? Here's my probe depths. Just what I thought this person would do, right? 313, our typical. And then I have to go in with my gingival margin. So this is equal soft. You're going to hear this hygienist say, -3, -1, -3, -3, -1, -3. All the way across. And guess what? Is there anything on my CAL, my clinical attachment loss? No, 0. This is what they're talking about. I could submit this, and we'll see the difference. If this was gingivitis, this is a valid chart. There's no attachment loss. This is what those x-rays should look like if you've never seen it. I'm not kidding. I honestly would do a course after course on looking at x-rays because I have honestly hygienists who want to argue with me that that patient doesn't have bone loss. They will argue with me on some of their x-rays that patients do not have bone loss, and they are dead serious. I mean, like, they'll take me in the parking lot and fight me over it. I am not kidding. Like, they are like, hands down, that patient does not have bone loss. I'll take you outside and show you they don't have bone loss. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I need to carry this around like a badge. Like, this is not a healthy.
Well, what we found with some of the teams that we work with is that you look at 1 or 2 millimeters of bone loss so much of the time that this looks weird. You think that 1 or 2 millimeters is healthy. It might be normal what you see all the time, but it's still not that. But we start to feel like it's normal and healthy.
I don't know where you found that bite wing, because it's like, even if you Google those images, you cannot find a bite wing around premolars that doesn't have 1 or 2 millimeters of bone loss.
This is a healthy person.
Yeah.
This person is very healthy. You can clearly see that. I don't look that good.
No.
I am not a healthy. You cannot classify me as healthy. Why? I had ortho. What do I have? From what?
Too much, too moving too fast.
And so what are you going to call on my chart? Recession. Right. I wish I was this person. So, no attachment loss with no bleeding is healthy. This is a trophy. No attachment loss with 8 or more teeth bleeding. Now what do we have? What the whole beginning of the course was. Now we have our 43, 46. They still don't have bone loss. But now what do we have? 8 teeth bleeding. In this case, get a tourniquet. But that could look like that almost every place. But look at the CAL. Is there any number on my CAL here? No, there's no attachment loss. And so that's what they're clearly stating from the ADA. They want you to what? No attachment loss, no radiographic bone loss, and you can submit a 4346.
So there's not going to be a lot of those technically.
Because what about the patients with recession, but they have like generalized gingivitis? Technically they have bone loss, so you can do this kind of.
That is where all these limitations are going to come in. I'm going to say you can. And they're going to be that narrative where, right, because they're going to be generalized gingivitis and they may have what? Localized, right, in an area. And that will have to be documented because because you're going to probably have 8 teeth somewhere on that patient. Like maybe that first one had the severe, but you can't root plane him, he has 1 millimeter, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see all these limitations as they come out, and that's where people like Daniel, really office managers, giving us that direct feedback when they call and get those limitations that we're going to be sharing that with you. Like MetLife has no limitation to where, right, Delta's saying, no, you can't. It has to be the entire mouth, no attachment loss. It'll be really interesting to see. But right now as it reads, this is what they are telling us. True gingivitis. So which starts to make you think what? What are you thinking? Okay, if I can't, what do I need to find? Maybe I need to be really true with my probe depths. Maybe I need to be really good at attachment levels. Because see, a lot of people just go and say, oh, they don't have any bone loss. Remember the girl who wanted to beat me out in the parking lot? And I saw 1 to 2, but she really wasn't putting it on her chart. Because I have no time, because I can't take, the time to do a good chart. So this is where this is really going to come into play because, right now, I would not be submitting anything that didn't look like this because that's what that code says. So I need to make sure I have a really accurate chart.
Am I going to be probing a 12-year-old with ortho for submission on this?
You need probing.
No, it opens a can of worms, doesn't it? Because honestly, most of us are like, I don't probe till they're 18. We all kind of, unless you work in a pedo office, they'll all yell at us. I'm gonna be honest.
Think of what their gums look like and think of what they feel like. And they're arching in a chair, and we're gonna start probing.
You know what, just throw some numbers out there.
Just be consistent with your
Just
numbers.
be consistent, be true. You heard me say, you gotta be true to yourself. That's all I care about. Be true to yourself.
You could be a 2 millimeter off.
Really like put ourselves like, well, they're not 21, so I'm not probing, or they're not 18, so I'm not probing. But I mean, if you've ever had a patient in your chair who is 12 or 13 or 14, I personally have done root planning on a 14-year-old female. And I'm not talking 4 millimeter pockets, I'm talking 6, 7 millimeter pockets with 3 millimeters of recession. It does happen. I think it's case by case. I think it's great if you can get some probe depths, but at least just acknowledging if they do have generalized, you know, severe recession, what are those gums going to look like when the braces come off?
When I'm with you, it's the first thing I thought about is I want to do 43, 46. What do I have to go do? Full chart. So what's my PSR doing for me? Do I have 8 teeth? Because once I hit 8 teeth, I got to do a full chart. Because he wants to document so we get full coverage.
And that's just what I want to do is see him not once but twice.
Yeah. What? Just
You know, oh God, they're coming back.
I didn't want to see him the first time.
I'm sure his friends, you just put him in hers.
You just
Call
say
it
out
sick.
loud.
I'm not saying anyone audited me. No. We're all having those questions, and I think that's great. It's what I want in our community, bringing that up. Because, right, we have to provide these safety nets for each other and be talking about it. How, right, that's what goes into treatment. How are we going to manage treatment? That's why you heard Patty talk about why work fans on the first visit to really almost do a pro fee or nothing and bring them back. Because, right, to go through and prayer chart some 12-year-olds, that's the icing on the cake for the day. You know, I have 2 boys, so yeah, that could be the icing on the cake for some of them. You know, so we're really going to be talking about that treatment, and you know, some of that's going to be personal philosophy as well as your doctor's philosophy, and how those mesh together as long as you stay within the parameters. And there is quite a bit of movement there. Not a whole lot, but some decision making as far as movement.
And maybe that's one that you say, you know what, we really need more time. I mean, most people get, what, 30 minutes for a 12-year-old who's in ortho, that it's going to take more than 30 minutes to do a perio chart plus all the other stuff. You know, maybe that's someone, hey, we need to do probiotics or we need to do paradox, and I need to see you in a couple weeks, and we're going to do a full chart. And then that way you're at least mentally prepared. It's not being sandwiched in the middle of a couple of appointments and you're running behind and going crazy.
And then you can tell the parents going to be discharged, and then you can actually bill for 43, 46. You can take the time, do the chart. So we're much bigger fans of that. You'll hear us a lot say go slow to go fast. Because, right, otherwise I always make a joke, some of you know, it's like, you know, where's the cotton rolls pain? I say, you know, this time of year, shove them up your nose. You know, you got your mask on, because otherwise the goo is like down on your chin. You know, you're draining, right? You got the sweat going on, and then you got Daniel walking behind you, asking you, come on, what'd you do today? Let's go, your next patient's here. So, you know, right, let's go slow to go fast, because, right, we have to protect ourselves in the process. Okay, this is what some hygienists want to beat me up in the parking lot. What is this?
It's healthy.
Yeah,
There is no bone
this
throwing.
is where I have to get a piece of tape a lot of days.
Maybe
Because,
that's all
right,
they were given in life.
I know. But this is what most hygienists will tell me is healthy. This is healthy all day long because that's what they see all day long. And I get it. And I have to remind myself that, right, that if that's all you see, that's all you know. But that doesn't mean it's right. And I love this picture because it's really drawing that line again, edge to edge, and we can see that 1 or 2 millimeters happening there. And so what does that really look like on this chart? Okay, so go look at the CAL. So we got our probe depths, we have our attachment loss, our gingival margin, and now suddenly we're seeing things populate on that 3rd line. Right, they have numbers. What are those numbers between? Between 1 and 4, what is that? Slight to moderate. Right, this patient has slight to moderate. I can go look at the X-rays and oh my gosh, it matches. I want to kiss her now. Okay, I know she gets it. Right, I shouldn't go look at this and then this chart tells me they're healthy or there's no attachment loss. Or better yet, it's telling me it has 5 millimeters of attachment loss or advanced when it doesn't. So I blew that up because a lot of people have a hard time seeing that. what most people's charts you're gonna see will zero this, they don't put in the gingival margin, and so that would say a 5, that would say a 4. But if you went and looked at x-rays where it's slight, it's not measuring that 5 or 4. Very different too. Now we're gonna go to advanced. I love this picture, it's really showing you that height there, right? And so our chart should reflect those. And we should see these advanced numbers. You're seeing now on the CAL, these 5s, 6s, and deeper numbers pop up on this patient. So attachment loss 5 millimeters and greater. Wow, I can see that on the x-ray. It's definitely there. This is an advanced case. They might not look that advanced out here. This is an advanced case. Because regardless if this is a 2 millimeters or where that is, I have to know where that attachment level to the CEJ is. I showed this picture because the girl who wants to beat me up in the parking lot has no problem telling me that that's advanced, right? They missed that in between. We missed the in between. A lot of people will tell us what's healthy, this patient's fine, and then they can't see the middle, the slight to moderate, but they can clearly, oh, I have an advanced patient. Like, okay, come on, coach, I'm gonna win you over. Like, let me show you this patient. It's so advanced, and I'm like, okay, she's here. I need to pull her back in because we're missing all the patients in between. So I say, why wait? Why are we waiting when it's that obvious? So a lot of it's just training our eyes. Most of us haven't trained our eyes. Most of us training our eyes to look at what on an x-ray? Decay. An eye is hygienist all the time. What's on your x-ray? What are you looking at? It's great. I want you to find the decay. That's great. Yeah, I can see that. I can see there's some things going on here. I want you to tell me where you are with your license. Where are you? What are you looking at? So how accurate are your charts? Most people, when they find this out, people have cried. I'm not gonna lie. I have coaches back there to validate that. I've had people call us crying, start crying in the room. Why? I would say, stop carrying the guilt. Let it go. Let it go. You didn't know. This isn't to say that you fabricated or lied on charts you did not know, and so as of today, you know. Because most people have zeros on their GM line, and so all these numbers are wrong. And then a lot of people say, yeah, we get group planning denied. I'm like, well, let's go look at your chart. You falsified a document, a legal document. People can get in trouble for that. But just Debbie, because she works front desk. She sent it, I didn't. So protect your administration, we want to be accurate. Okay, this is what this falsified chart looks like. This is inaccurate. This is a denial of services. See, probe depths? No, nothing on the GMs, so the computer automatically does what? Zeros. Automatically does what with that 0? Adds it and gives you a CAL. And guess what? This is what their x-ray looks like. So insurance company gets in and says, you're trying to tell me, let's say it was gingivitis or bleeding, or you're trying to get submission for root planing on these 4s, and they're looking at what? X-rays. Let's go see if this person charted correctly. They're going to deny it, falsifying the record. Denial of service. Some won't even look at it, we've seen, just because it is zeroed. So, you know, they want to find any way they can to do what? Yeah, to not pay. So that's an easy one. All right, so you want to look at your CAL line. If you have no CAL, it can only be 2 options, which are healthy or gingivitis. If you have something on your CAL line, now you're in periodontal disease classification. It's just that simple. Keep it black and white. It's that simple for you. Second, you just want to know, okay, is it slight, moderate, to advanced? He gives us the criteria. You have a little cheat sheet. You can easily look at that all day long. And then they also tell us if it's localized, that means 50 sites or under, generalized, 51 sites. Do most people, are they all localized or all generalized? No. I'll tell you, your number one classification, my doctor will tell you, I probably say that on times a day, I'm sick of saying it. Doctor walks in, I say, Dr. Brown, yes, did a period chart today. She's generalized, slight to moderate, localized, advanced, active. Most people are generally slight to moderate. They've had a recession. They have 1 or 2 millimeters of attachment loss. I may have a 5 millimeter of true bone loss somewhere, and so that's why I have to tell her there is localized, advanced. I'm telling her it's active or not. What am I telling her when I say it's active? It's bleeding. It's active, infection. If I said it's stable, I'm going to see her at her next 3 months or 6 months, and I'm telling her it's stable. I don't need to do treatment on this patient. So I can let that doctor know within seconds of my diagnosis, and we're speaking the same language, and we're actually speaking a legal language, and that's really what then goes into my chart. Don't need to say healthy 1 to 3, except for tooth number 5 that has a 4 millimeter pocket, and except for tooth number 15 equals 6 millimeter pocket. That is not a legal diagnosis. If anyone's doing that, I'm guilty. Stop. Stop the madness. Keep it simple and keep it legal. Protect yourself. So what is this? What is this?
No bone loss.
No bone loss. We can draw a line. Yay. What is this? How much? Slight to moderate. Good. What would you say here? Tell me on a couple of these. So right, what you want to do is kind of connect your lines. 2. Right, so we probably have what? This is probably easily slight. What's happening here? Can you see that? This is what I'll ask a lot of people. What's happening right here is a furcation, right? So what, I want your eye to go here. Follow that. So we don't have a cone beam. So what are we looking at here? If this was all the way drawn up here, so now you're going to here. What's probably here? Recession. And so what's probably this area? That's my localized advanced. See, because generalized, they're probably 1 to 2, right? But then I have this probably recession going on, or maybe not. I have a probably 5 millimeter pocket. And rightfully so, because what? You can see that furcation isn't too far off. What I want to leave you with today by showing you something is actually just train your eye. Most people's eye is going to here, right? We've got decay. Great, make your diagnosis. That is your job too. You're screaming decay. Can your eye see it? Can you see it? So what's this patient? Yep, advanced. Same one. Okay. We're going to look at a couple period charts, because this is what you have to do. What was it? What time? 8:40. Great. All right, this chart, if you can't see it, I'm going to tell you. All these numbers are between 1 to 3, so we get to 14 and 15. We have a 4 and 5 millimeter. On our gingival margin, we have recorded, but our calculation tells us we do have some attachment loss between 1 and 4. So just tell me, in this facial aspect of this patient, what is our diagnosis so far? What's the classification so far?
Slight to moderate.
Slight to moderate. Great. Let's drop down. We're going to look at that. We can even just jump down, because we just want to make classification. Where do we even just need to look? So you can go really fast. So I want to teach you to go fast. Okay, I want to make classification. I want to be legal. Right, everything's between 1 and 3. I'm going to drop down. Everything's between 1 and 3. I'm going to drop down. Right. So I had a 4, but that's still what?
Localized.
No, 4 is still between what? Slight to moderate. So this patient could be classified as
Slight to moderate. Active.
Localized active.
Localized active.
well, that's treatment. I just want you could, because I say they're active. Why? They're bleeding. Then we'll go to treatment and talk about what are you going to treat, which some of you want to go there. Yes. Table 4.
11.
All right, what is this diagnosis? We're going to just look at the CAL. What do we have here?
Ooh.
you know how many are fives? Fives are the only advanced. Everything else on here is a slight to moderate. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything else is, and that's how we want to train our eyes. Most everything is slight to moderate. We just have a few advanced. So that's our generalized, slight to moderate. I do have localized, yes, advanced. So your CAL, what do we have? Some fives. How many? 1, 2. Have another one, 3. Another one, 4. Another one, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I'm still what? It's actually a little tricky one. That's, we can get more depth. But overall, what would you say? What's generally there?
Like to moderate.
Right. But do you have advanced?
Yes.
So you would say localized advanced. Is it active?
Yes.
Yes. So I do want to talk about how this comes in connection because you saw the student talk about stop at gingivitis. That was their thing about attachment loss. Why are we waiting? Why would we want to start with gingivitis? That's why we've been waiting for this code. Because it's going to push what? It's pushing the envelope on what? They're saying no attachment loss. So if you're not charting inaccurately and you're sending them stuff that has all these high CALs, then what? 1, you have an inaccurate chart. 2, it's not going to get covered for gingivitis. It is not gingivitis. That is periodontal disease. And you should be treating it that way. And that's why we are so excited about code, because it's really, there's no argument out in the parking lot. It's making it more black and white. So my argument, next argument is, can we just keep telling a gingivitis patient to brush better? Most people want to. Most people want to just say, I'm going to do a 43, 46, which we'll talk about treatment, but whatever their 43, 46 is going to be, and they need to what? Brush better. I'm going to ask you where the plaque is on this gingivitis patient, because I don't see any. So what is that? What are you looking at? This is biological. So there are 8 gingival diseases. Nobody's talking about this. This is another reason why this code is coming out. The AAP made 8 gingival diseases, and we have a hard enough time just naming one: gingivitis, moderate to advanced. These are your 8 gingival diseases. There is plaque-induced that every girl wants to beat me out in the parking lot about, and Kristen can tell you I will get and ask, great, do you know what's causing their infection? Don't I ask that? Of course, they need to brush their teeth. Really? How do you know that? How do you know? Because there are 8 gingival diseases. What if it is the second biggest category, non-plaque induced? And this can be by what? They're naming the bacteria here. They are naming bacteria. Streptococcus or Streptomonademas. They are naming that. How are you going to know if your patient has that non-plaque induced? It's what? Biological. Bacteria in the tissue. How are you going to know? A saliva test. Right. So this comes back here too. When they are naming infections, again, we do have some tests that do check for viral infections, and that's what you're seeing here. Here's the fungal. So right, you're going to be seeing more and more tests come out with that. And that's where I'm going to bring home, because this is where we started with Dr. Boulder, the cardiologist, is that when we just tell somebody to brush their teeth, if you have gingivitis, that's what this is. Do they truly just have gingivitis in their tissue? Or are you setting them up? Are they in the cascade mode and they're already releasing their interleukins, the osteoclasts are breaking down, we have this going on in this blood vessel, and you're worried about them brushing the plaque off their teeth. This is this cascade. It's the cytokines, the neutrophils. This you're not touching, and I really will keep bringing these pictures. If you're with me on testing, these are some of the first pictures I showed. Because when you tell me I'm going to teach my patient and it's just plaque, guess what? You're not touching this. This is plaque. What is this? This is the inflammatory cascade. And this actually came from our compendium, Continuing Education, in 2004, talking about the link between heart disease and gingivitis. So it's not about how much destruction, that's what I want to make sure you're leaving with. It's about what? It's really about the process, the inflammatory process. And the more you can see that inflammatory process on your x-ray, on your charts, the more you're going to start seeing this process in front of you, and you'll start to be able to relate your test to that. So this could be my gingivitis patient, and they're doing what? Biologically, they're lighting up the screen. And that's the argument. Some people want this test to be part of that diagnosis. And this is where we then head into the difference between classification and treatment we take. Because, right, I can still classify them all the way back to just gingivitis if I don't have that very big probe depth. If it's still, I haven't lost any attachment, they can have no attachment and just be bleeding, and they can be what? A biological mess. And so we're going to treat that patient very differently. Your patient can look just like this. And so I ask, is this really perio or is this gingivitis? I argue if I have this test, I have what going on? A periodontal infection. Might not be able to code for it. I'll have to work within my codes, but I definitely know to treat it differently. So what we see in front of us is just the sign or symptom of something that could be going on at a much higher level, and that's really what your test is telling you. I always tell my patients, if you clear your test, great, you get the Rath and Laura. I get to teach you what I was taught in school, how to brush and floss your teeth. That's why it's the Rath and Laura, because I really don't want to teach somebody how to brush and floss their teeth all day long. Right, most of my patients are high on their tests because they have something what? Microbially, or what we call biologically, going on. So, classification keeps you legal. No more faulty charts. No more putting your administration in the hot seat. Testing, to me, is a whole nother path to making a huge impact, not on your patients, but I feel like the community, their families, and our world, because that's what takes you into treating and treating different. You can have a huge impact on your treatment. So I hope you guys will join us in February. We are going to be doing pericharts. So we're going to have you diagnose your own pericharts. I love for people to sign up if you want to participate. Either come up, explain your periochart, explain how you classified them. There's no judgment here. This is a safe community. And right, do we agree? Don't we agree? What do we see? What would we do classify differently? Or you don't even want to get up or have anyone in the audience know it's your chart. You just send me your chart, and one of the coaches will present your chart for you and see if that classification, how it's classified. We're also going to practice with just, yes, clean gloves and some plastic probes, measuring gingival margin. I want to make sure that everyone participates, actually sees it, and some people need to have that I have to do it to believe it kind of thing. So we'll do that as well. And then on March 2nd, we're going to get into the actual treatment, creating your treatment plans. Well, thank you guys. Questions, comments? Yes.
What's the name of that website that has this video, so I can take it back to our other pages?
There's a couple, and there's actually another girl I'd like to, and I forget her name. She's they're pretty
corner, they're doing for the national start.
That's what I thought. We're usually good in third. My husband says we're up in Shaw, we're just another hit, so we're this week.
While Laura's looking for that, I just wanted to throw out there, I know we have a few new people in tonight. I just want to encourage you guys to stick with it. We've all been in your shoes. If it's the first time you've heard of gingival margin and gingival height, and we just want to encourage you to not be frustrated by it and give up. Because we've been there, it does come with lots of kicking and screaming. We can assure you of that. But we just want you to know that we are in your corner. We are not here to point fingers and blame anyone. We are here to support you and to encourage you to know the difference. Once you know better, you can do better. So we just want you guys to know that we're here to support you in that. We just appreciate you coming. And we can make a difference knowing more.
That's why I know we all started here. I mean, when I think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I ever looked at an X-ray before I ever did a period chart. We always laugh, you know. 21 years, you go back and you look at a chart you did 20 years ago. I mean, John laughed to keep from crying. Spanny and I always say, you know, we all started there, and that's what we want everyone to know. That's why we want to help each other, because there are different people that are in different categories, and to be able to call another colleague or have another colleague, we want people to be able to have that too in this group. To be like, okay, how's it going? What's going on? And where are you with that? So any other questions? You got it.
There's all the newcomers tonight.
Yay.
Great to have new people. And come back. Drive carefully going home. Take some bacon and some cookies.